Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the fourth short video on Robinson Crusoe. So all of you are aware that Robinson Crusoe stands as one of the core texts of English colonialism, and I have argued that Crusoe lays down the entire process of the creation of an empire, charting and marking territory, encountering the other, colonizing the other, not only in terms of power, but also in terms of erasing his earlier identity and providing him with language and religion. And finally, creating the other in such a way that he willfully becomes a comprador in spreading the cause of the superiority of the English civilization, of the English or the European civilization. But today, what I want to do is to take a look at Crusoe's imaginary in terms of the appearance of Friday. How does Friday look like? And what are the racial implications of this description of Friday? That is what is the focus of this short video. And I am projecting my screen here with a short PowerPoint, which will give you the exact, kind of idea. So here goes. Now, Friday, when he arrives, is seen as a comely fellow. Now, the first part of this description, and it will arrive on your screen in just a moment, harps on the physical stature of Friday as a laborer. So, comely, handsome fellow, perfectly well made, with straight, strong limbs, tall and well shaped. So, very importantly, Friday is viable and employable labor. So that's the first part which Crusoe looks at, whether he's fit for sort of being his slave and for hard manual work. He's also young, so 26 years of age. Now the second thing is very interesting. If you take a very careful look at it, he has a very good countenance, not a fierce and surly aspect, but something very manly. So Friday is not the rebellious, not the surly, not the non-cooperative type. So within Friday's appearance, Crusoe discerns docility and obedience. See, we are looking at an imaginary, and the imaginary of the perfect slave, as it were, the perfect slave who will then become the comprador of the empire. So those words, therefore, fierce, not fierce or surly, but something very manly, sweetness and softness of a European in his countenance too. Now that leads me to an interesting point. You see, Friday is never really fully human for Crusoe. He might be his companion, Friday might be taught by Crusoe, but somewhere there is always a lack. So he is like an European, but not quite an European. So if we look at the concept of the mimic man, then Friday is somewhere, a mirror image, as Crusoe would like him to be, but not quite. Now, the next part, of course, talks about the racial implications. So hair was long and black, not curled like wool. And you see the shape of the forehead becomes very important, very high and large. So quite clearly, more, in the sense, if I might use the word within quotes, backward, as it were, more, once again within quotes, primitive to Crusoe. Great vivacity and sparkling sharpness, but he's intelligent. So Crusoe is not creating a sort of unintelligent savage, as it were. He creates somebody who has intelligence, but is defined by his exotic other othering in his appearance. The color of his skin, that is where you see the racial implications absolutely are imprinted. It's not quite black. Now, you see, you are looking at this individual through the prism of the European man patriarch Crusoe, white. And therefore, through the prism of whiteness, his color is not quite black, so he's not quite African in that sense, but very tawny, not an ugly, yellow, nauseous tawny. Notice those words, ugly, nauseous. So, the other is seen in terms of ugliness and nauseousness. So the concept of, the binaries of beauty and ugliness are worked in, as the Brazilians and Virginians. So already Crusoe has dismissed the African as black and nauseous, and also the Brazilians and Virginians, the Latin Americans, as ugly and nauseous, but of a bright kind of a dun olive color that had in it something very agreeable. Notice once again, he is agreeable but not quite human. So Friday steps into that liminal zone in terms of his body color as well, in dun olive color that is agreeable but not very easy to describe. And then, of course, although his eyes are intelligent, Friday must be essentially be shown to be infantile. So his face was round and plump, his nose small, not flat like the Negroes, right? So once again, even his nose distinguishes him from the Negroes, but his nose is still small, not the sharp nose of the European. A very good mouth, thin lips, fine teeth, well set, as white as ivory. Once again, notice how, even the human being is seen in terms of the resource, the teeth, is always compared with the teeth of the elephant, which would be riches. So, in that sense, this white-teethed Friday is equally like the elephant, somebody who can be used by Crusoe in terms of finance. You will remember that very often slaves were examined and their teeth were pulled to see what their age would be like. So what does this description tell us? This description tells us that Crusoe wants Friday to be a companion, and therefore he makes him more agreeable than what his racist prejudices would make him out to be. Equally, is not quite human, in the sense that all the, almost rainbow colors that he uses, ugly, yellow, black, white. So he's defining, the human being in terms of color, and color is associated with value, ugly, nauseous, and so on and so forth. So at every level, every sentence, there are certain racial implications, creating binaries between the white, masculine, controlling, powerful European versus the other colored, docile, and therefore worthy to be colonized individuals of the other continents. And this racial implication quickly deepens into the gesture of power. So much as Robinson Crusoe might teach Friday, and much as he might yearn for companionship, this one gesture signifies that Friday's relationship with Crusoe is one of power and dominion, right? So you read those lines, and Friday lays his head flat upon the ground, So just as an objectification of the the other, he sets my other foot upon his head. Now this is very interesting. You see, in this submission, Crusoe does not want the submission. It is Friday who voluntarily sets his foot. So this is the archetypal fantasy of the colonizer, that the colonized submits to him not by force, but by volition, so that he becomes, his entire project of violence becomes sanitized into the white man's munificence and grandiose, appeal to the colonized, as it were, and make signs to me of subjection, servitude, and submission. So ultimately, Friday must be anthropologically mapped, just as the island was mapped, so that Crusoe can inscribe subjection, servitude, and submission upon him. And in the fantastic imagery of, or imaginary of, Crusoe's perfect utopia of colonialism, the colonized, the other, voluntarily accepts this subjection, servitude, and submission, so that Crusoe can then be the more generous master to him. I let him know that I was very well pleased with him. So, key to understanding Friday's relationship with Crusoe are these two passages. His appearance, which shows the racial prejudice within Robinson Crusoe. If you want to know more, you can read another novel which moves on the same lines, Aphra Behn's Orinoco, where also appearance becomes a very important aspect. And this will be continued also in the idea of the noble savage within Jean-Jacques Rousseau. But in many ways, you see, it is implicated also in the rhetoric of slavery and colonialism and of power between the different races and civilizations that Robinson Crusoe foregrounds. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you when I post many more such short videos for you. Thank you, and have a very good day ahead.